Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hope you all are doing well today and Friday Junior. I'm going to kind of stall here for a few minutes, let people see that we are live, get all my stuff working here. If you're joining, please say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. State if you're from one of our Washington audience. Let us know how you're holding up in Washington. It's crazy. It's actually crazy all across the country right now, and we're going to get into that today. There's some breaking news about a Trump executive order that just came out this afternoon. So we're going to dive into that today. I've also got a legislative update for our Washington friends. Let you know kind of still what's still floating around out there that we are watching for. And also, a lot of these bills have now been passed, and some of them have been signed into law. And others are awaiting being signed. And then there are some that are still waiting to be passed and concurrent. So we will get into all of that today. I see Maddie B is here in the chat with our leadership team. We've got Leslie from Republic and Mary from Spokane. Both are on our leadership team, and a child is calling me. They always do that. As soon as I go live, it's like they get the notification or something and they decide to call. Anyway, so we're going to dig into all these things today. If you have a specific question about any legislation or just anything in general that's going on politically, feel free to leave that in the chat, and I will do my best to answer. I will say, so right now in Washington, because a lot of our audience is from Washington, there are a lot of tax bills going around right now. They are all kind of on the Senate side. There were 23 bills, most of them fiscal policy bills, that had a hearing in the Ways and Means Committee yesterday. And they are all scheduled for executive session tomorrow. Now, the last day of the session is supposed to be the 27th, which I think that would be Sunday, right? So, Sunday. They have hearing on or executive session on the 25th. So I'm guessing that they're going to have some kind of floor action on Saturday. And I don't think they usually schedule floor action on Sundays, but maybe they do. Anyway, is Washington going into a special session? I would say almost certainly. I'm like 99% sure of that. And I've never, I've only been really watching legislation for like the last 4 sessions. So it's not like I've been around for years and years. And I've actually never seen them. Actually, that's not true. In 2021, they were called into a special session in the summer of 2021. I think that was when they did some of those police bills because we did a live stream actually with Sheriff Adam Fortney. But Conservative Ladies wasn't really engaged in legislation. We just happened to know that it was going on. So we kind of got involved, and it was something that citizens needed to know about. So that's why we did the live stream. But that's really the only special session that I've seen in my short time being involved. So I don't know typically, how likely is that, but just judging on the fact of where these bills are in the legislative process, I just don't see how they get it done before the 27th or by the 27th. So I think we're looking at least another week for them to come to an agreement on all of this stuff. So, hey, Kitty. Kitty is from Taxington, formerly known as Washington. It's good to see you here today. Glad you guys are joining us. So Conservative Ladies, we're pretty specific on our policies that we watch. We really cover First Amendment, Second Amendment, parental rights, children's rights. We need to redefine that because I think, now that anybody, we've changed the definition of parent. And so I think it's really important that we focus on children's rights, the right to life. And what's the last one? Education. Thank you. Maddie B said education. I don't know if you were answering me, but yes, education. So that's our sort of scope of focus. We're not really into tax policy or transportation policy or business or, we really try to stay in our lane. And so unfortunately, if you're here for a tax conversation, I am not your girl. I don't like dealing with the money things. It's just like, it's not even interesting to me, except don't take my money. That's the interest I have. Don't take my money. I don't like taxes. So, but there are a lot. I've never seen in just the last few sessions, I've never seen this many tax policies in a given session. I mean, when I looked at the agenda for the Ways and Means Committee on Wednesday for yesterday, I just was like, it was just exhausting to look at it and to like try to wrap my head around all of these different taxes. Like they're just nickel and diming the Washington taxpayers to death. And it's just exhausting. And so I feel for you guys in Washington. And if you're watching, are you going to stick it out? Are you like, I'm here for it? Or are you like, no, I'm taking my money and I'm not going to fund this government anymore? Would be curious what your thoughts are on that. But want to give you a heads up on something that just came out. Trump had this executive order. Was it January or February? I forget when he signed it, but it was for requiring proof of citizenship to be able to vote in United States elections. And that was a great thing, right? We really want election security, election, transparency. And if you have to show your, citizenship or your ID for, like, you can't get on an airplane without proper identification. So we should require that for voting too. I think that was a really common sense executive order. Well, today a judge has just overturned that. So let me bring this up so you guys can see it. And I'll just kind of read part of it here. But the district judge, Colleen Collar-Cottley, issued a 120-page opinion blocking the administration's proposed changes. She ruled that requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote runs counter to the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. The president has no constitutional power over election regulation that would support this unilateral exercise of authority. The Constitution vests that power in the states and Congress alone. The judge also emphasized that when Congress passed the NRVA, it explicitly considered and rejected a citizenship documentation requirement, determining that it would be inconsistent with the law's intent to expand voter participation. Well, we know how well that has worked. So this is really, it's a setback, but this is another reason why it's so important that these executive orders, and there are so many amazing executive orders that President Trump has signed, it's so important that they be legislated and signed into law, because as the judge stated here, that there's that power that lies with Congress. And you may have heard of the SAVE Act. On the House side, this is sponsored, prime sponsor is Chip Roy from Texas. And on the Senate side, it's Mike Lee from Utah. And the SAVE Act did pass through the House of Representatives, and now it goes to the Senate. So it's awaiting passage in the Senate. This would be huge. This is what we need to have happen. So the SAVE Act is still alive and well. The ruling here just applies to the executive order. So we really want the SAVE Act to move forward, to get passed through the Senate, and that way it can be enacted into law. I would imagine, though, that once that happens, hoping that all of our Republicans are on board with this, once the SAVE Act is passed by the Senate and signed into law by President Trump, I would imagine that you are going to see lawsuits flying from probably Bob Ferguson and Nick Brown, as well as their friends in Oregon, California, New York, Illinois, Michigan, I don't know, wherever people want to expand voter participation. They have such a nice way of saying it. You got to hand it to the left. They're pretty good at messaging. So this is an unfortunate setback, but I think it's a really good reminder for us just how important it is for these executive orders to be legislated and actually passed into law. Because the other, what happens is you could have a Democrat president after Trump that will just come in and undo that. I mean, that's what we've been seeing over the last, several terms with, after Obama. Then it was Trump, and Trump reversed a bunch of Obama stuff. And then Biden came in and reversed a bunch of Trump stuff. And now Trump is reversing Biden stuff. So it's just this back and forth. Let's legislate it. Let's get it signed into law. Hello, Silvermine. Great to see you today. I pray those lawsuits lose too, Kitty. It's really been unbelievable to see what's happening in America's judicial system. Really, you can see how captured the courts are by leftists. And I was talking to somebody about this. Actually, I was talking to a neighbor last night. Had happy hour with a few of our conservative neighbors. And do you guys remember the movie, The Pelican Brief? It's based on a John Grisham book, and Julia Roberts was in it. I forget who else was in it. Maybe Denzel Washington. I forget, but it was about a Supreme Court justice, and I think he had been assassinated or something like this. But it reminds me, like, I think about that movie, and I'm just reminded of like the corruption that goes on and how these people are likely, I mean, what's going on behind the scenes? I mean, I think these movies and these books are based on, to some degree, reality. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that float around in my head when I see stuff like this. And I just wonder, like, who is influencing you? Who is holding you hostage, or what's the bribing you? On that. So I wonder about that. But yesterday was arguments on the Maryland schools case, where parents want to be able to have the ability to opt out if their children are being exposed to LGBTQ curriculum, inappropriate curriculum at a young age, and the school district would not allow parents to opt out. So it's insane to me that this is what we're dealing with at a Supreme Court level, where it should be automatically that parents can opt their kids out of anything they want, especially in the younger grades. It just, at any age, it just doesn't make sense. So it'll be interesting to see how that ruling comes out. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have high hopes for this Supreme Court. I've just seen, some of these conservatives that, especially Amy Coney Barrett, no relation, but it's been really, she's been a huge disappointment. Unfortunately, we thought that she was going to be a big Trump conservative. So we're watching that, and you probably are too. I think I posted a video on X this morning, a clip of it was just the audio of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, where she was saying that yes, parents, you do have a choice. You don't have to send your kids to public schools. And that's really their attitude. They don't want it to be an inclusive place for you and your family if your religious beliefs do not align with their alphabet religious beliefs. Inclusion only goes one way. And really, if you don't agree with that way, then you should get out. And I know this is not a popular thing to say, but truly, the best thing that you can do for your children is homeschool and make a way. I understand that it's difficult. We've got an event coming up May 6th. We're telling everybody homeschool your kids, and we don't want to just like tell you that with no resources. So we are bringing together some of the top leaders in the homeschool movement across the country. Jonathan and Adriana Prescott of Homeschool Life. They also wrote the book, Kids Don't Need School. Robert Bortons of Classical Conversations is going to be joining us again. Lindsay Mann and Lindsay Whitney own Homeschool Supply Company. They're based out of Washington State. And Kevin Bowden of HSLDA, the kind of the legal side of homeschool. And so each of these people is going to be talking about a different aspect of homeschool. And we're really hoping that we will give parents some sort of out of the box ideas if you're kind of stuck thinking, I don't know how I could possibly make this work, but I feel so I don't want my kids in the public school. So we're going to try to offer you some resources about that. So save the date. It is May 6th. I believe that's a Tuesday night. It'll be 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And be sure to share that. It's going to be live streaming on our YouTube channel. It will be available for replay. So if you're not able to join us live, you can go back and rewatch it. Okay. Let's talk about baby bonuses. Did you guys hear that President Trump has this idea of offering $5,000 to, I'm going to say, new moms if you choose to have your baby? And this is to address the decline in population, the decline in the birth rate. And I want to preface my comments by saying I got pregnant at 20 years old. It was an unplanned pregnancy. I was very close to having an abortion, canceled at the very last minute, and decided that I was going to keep my baby. I was going to find a way to keep my baby. So I do understand being pregnant, not being ready, not being financially ready. I didn't even have a job. I moved with my boyfriend, my daughter's father. We had just moved from the Seattle area to Newport Beach, California. We were just going to be young and fun and, live the beach life. And 2 weeks after we moved, found out I was pregnant. And so I didn't have a job and was definitely not ready. I actually had to, I went to Planned Parenthood to get prenatal vitamins, and they kind of hooked me up with, they didn't actually pressure me into an abortion, but again, that was almost 30 years ago. So different times. But so this baby bonus is to talk, I guess, to incentivize women to not have an abortion, but instead have babies. And, I'm so pro-life. I abortion is evil, and I would do anything to help a woman make the decision to give birth to her baby, and whether she kept it herself or gave it up for adoption, but to choose life for that child. And I think I'm also a conservative, so I don't think government being involved in our families is a good idea. And I also think that every time there are government strings or government money, there are government strings attached to it. And so what happens if you take this $5,000 payout for having a baby? And I also think $5,000 doesn't really go very far, especially if you live in a state like Washington. That isn't going to get you very far at all. And so how do we change? I think this idea of making motherhood great again, I love the idea, first of all, but I think that we need to find other ways to incentivize people to, I don't even know if incentivizing people to have kids is the right way to say it, but we really have, our culture has made it so that women think of motherhood as an inconvenience from the important work. You can have it all. You can have a career. You can do all these things. You can have someone else raise your baby. Your baby can go to daycare. You can have a nanny. You can do all, you can have the life you want, and you can pay someone else to come in and raise your child. And I was all like, I thought this sounded great. When I was younger, I thought, yeah, I'm going to have a job. I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to have someone taking care of the kids. We have outsourced parenting to people that aren't the parents of our children. And I think it has had such a devastating effect on the American culture as we have outsourced this parenting to other people. We have children who are growing up that do not share the beliefs that their parents had or that their grandparents had. And I think especially not just mothers, but our society has told fathers that they're not important, and they're not necessary. We don't need them to have healthy children, healthy families. And we have a huge epidemic of fatherless children, or children who don't have fathers in the home or have been, disconnected from their fathers in some way. And we're seeing this play out in, how many of these, I think Katie Faust, who is the founder of Them Before Us, I follow her on Twitter. She's a great follow on Twitter, but she had done something the other day after the FSU shooting last week, and where she went through some of these people who had been shooters of, over like the past couple of decades. The common denominator with each of these shooters was that they were from a fatherless home. They were all without dads. And, my kids didn't grow up with their dad. There was an abuse situation and there was no dad in the home. And I know that was very hard for them, hard for me. It is critical that we have fathers in the home. It is critical for healthy families and for a healthy society that we have fathers as the head of the family. And I think that instead of a $5,000 baby bonus, well, that might sound good and it might sound like a quick fix on a very small scale. I think it doesn't even get close to the root of the problem. And I think instead it creates more of a problem. It's really a welfare system, to be honest about it. And we already have a welfare system in place. And I was telling some folks in our citizen meeting earlier this afternoon, here in Florida, we have Hope Florida. And it is where it's through the state of Florida, but it's not, I don't know how to, it is, but it isn't. It's not taxpayer funded. It's basically where, like, if you need services, some kind of support services, mental health services, food, whatever it is, they have partnered, the Hope Florida partners with churches and other organizations that help people in need. And they're nonprofit organizations funded by other means, but they've brought together all these different organizations to be part of the Hope Florida program. And so when you call Hope Florida, you get connected to a Hope navigator, and they help the resident figure out, what kind of services do you need? And then they pair them up with the different organizations, which is a great thing. And the whole idea is to get these people, it's not a handout, but a hand up. Get them the supports that they need so that they can be independent of the government, so that they don't have to live on welfare systems. And, that's the difference between, a state like Washington, where they have huge welfare systems. And so that's a huge drain on the tax-paying citizens. And it doesn't give people, for the most part, and I think we're seeing this play out in places like Washington and California, it's not giving them the hand up. It's not encouraging people to be independent. It is encouraging them to be dependent on the state system, because there's so much different supports there that it backfires. And it, what does that mean then? It just needs more funding, more taxpayer funding to keep these programs afloat, and you get more people on them. And so I don't know. Be curious what you guys think of the baby bonuses. I'm a no. I'm a hard no on baby bonuses. I don't think that's conservative. So, and I think there's other ways to encourage families. And I think that, the church really needs to play a role in that. And I can do a whole podcast just on the church and their need to step up. Let's dig into Washington. What's going on in Washington? Okay, so speaking of handouts, Bob Ferguson, I did a video on this a couple days ago. He signed House Bill 1696, reparations for the historically marginalized. If you have descendants who lived in Washington prior to 1969, you might be eligible for reparations. They would get, they're eligible for this program up to like 120% of the median income. After 5 years, there's a loan forgiveness program. They don't have to pay it back. So I guess the taxpayers will be footing the bill for that. the covenant home ownership program in Washington was just became law in 2023. So it's only 2 years old. Probably not even. It probably didn't even like take effect until the summer of 2023. So it's not even 2 years old, and they're already hugely expanding on this program, which was one of the arguments that the Republicans used against, expanding the program. Like, let's give it some more time to play out and see if it's actually working. But as you would imagine, the Democrats were not having any of that. So that is signed into law. It doesn't have an emergency effect. I didn't see a date of an effective date on the bill. So I think probably 90 days after signing. So sometime in July. Medical mandates, House Bill 1531 was signed. I think that was on Monday. And that did have an emergency clause. So that has now taken effect. And what this bill does, a lot of people are calling it the vax mandate bill. It could do that. It definitely has the potential to do that. There is a statement in the bill that is not the intent of the bill, but that doesn't mean, just because that's not the intent of the bill, that doesn't mean they can't do that. So what I think that they're really using this bill to do is to ensure that cities, counties that maybe want to prohibit any kind of a mandate, whether it's a vaccine mandate, a stay-at-home order, whatever it is, those jurisdictions would not be able to circumvent whatever the state is doing. So whatever the state says is the rule, that's what has to go. So they have taken authority, very broad authority over your local jurisdiction, which, we see that with education as well. It's no surprise. And we've kind of seen over the last few years, they've been putting sort of some more pieces in place for the next emergency. And I fully believe that House Bill 1531 is, part of strengthening that system so that when the next emergency does come, they've got these laws in place to give the state that broad authority. Because Eastern Washington is such a different game than Western Washington, and you have different jurisdictions in Eastern Washington that I think we're pushing back on that. I know was it Kennewick or Richland, one of those school boards says, yeah, we're not doing the masks at school. So I think this is targeting places like that and situations like that we saw during COVID. Militia, House Bill 1321, regulating outside militia. Now, if the president wants to send in the National Guard and he makes presidential order, that can happen. So he still has that authority. But let's say Idaho wanted, to send in the National Guard to Spokane, or something was going, let's say there was chaos and anarchy and, it was bleeding into Washington. Without the governor's authority, they would not be able to do that. So it's kind of a weird bill, because it's like, was this really a threat? Was this really going to happen? And I think it's in response, number one, to the immigration efforts and the deportation efforts. And number two, I think it was a power play. Like, I'm going to show you who's boss. So we see a lot of that in Washington. All right. House Bill 1163. This is your permit to purchase bill. This has been passed fully, all the way passed. Now it just waits to be signed into law, which could be any day. It doesn't take effect though until it has to be funded by June 30th of this year. And then it takes effect, the new bill, they put an amendment in there. So it takes effect, I want to say it's May of 2027. So it got bumped out about a year. And that's a really bad bill. I think they're saying there's like $20 million in cost, but $31 million in revenue over the first biennium that this policy is in place. So get your firearms before 2027 or get out of Washington. You can buy lots of guns in other states that you can't buy in Washington. Did you know, sorry, totally random, like bird walk. What do they call that? California, or it's either California or Colorado has a bill that it looks like it's, if I recall correctly, it looks like it's moving forward, but they have a bill that would raise the age to be able to purchase ammunition to 21 years old. Colorado is working very hard to catch up with the likes of California and Washington. If you haven't been paying attention, and California has some like Glock ban that they're trying to pass through. Crazy. Also signed into law, I want to say this was yesterday, Senate Bill 5480. This prohibits the reporting of medical debt to credit agencies. So Ferguson was really excited. This is going to save, Washingtonians $300,000 or something like that. If there's really no enforcement mechanism to collect on medical debt, what's going to happen then, right? People are going to let it go, and your insurance premiums are going to go up. Or you're going to have providers that maybe provide state insurance. Well, if they're providing state insurance, nobody has to pay for that. But for private insurance, that's going to go up. So that's another unfortunate one. House Bill 1971 is on the governor's desk waiting to be signed. This bill, I have a graphic for this one. This bill, there was a few Senate Republicans who are very mad at me because I want people to know the truth about this bill. This bill is very harmful to children. As you probably know, children in Washington state can access so-called gender-affirming care and abortions. It's considered protected health care in Washington state without parent notification, without parent consent. There is no minimum age. And this bill, House Bill 1971, that the Democrats posted about on Trans Day of Visibility, because they're more committed than ever to protecting and supporting transgender and gender expansive people across Washington. So House Bill, they've got on this post, they have House Bill 1296 and House Bill 1971, which protects access to hormone replacement therapy by requiring 12-month refills. Now, I've been poking around a little bit because there were people in the trans community who were unhappy about this bill because it didn't include testosterone. But I saw the sponsor of the bill, Nicole Macri, was letting people know that the bill actually does include testosterone and up to a 6-month supply, because that is all that the FDA will allow. So they can't go more than 6 months, but the bill does include that they would be required to get the maximum amount of refills of testosterone. This is really concerning, you guys, because Planned Parenthood, as you're probably well aware, is fully embedded into the public schools in Washington state. There are 69 school-based health centers that are connected to schools in Washington state. And kids have easy access to this stuff, and they can even go stay in a host home or a youth shelter if they want to access these services. And I think there were 9 Senate Republicans who voted yes on this bill. 2 of them actually got on the Senate floor and said, "I rise to support this bill." One of them quoted the inflammation that was happening on social media. And I'm assuming they're talking about me and conservative ladies, because I haven't seen anyone else on the right posting about it. But as someone who left the state primarily because of the laws that do not allow parents to be involved in their children's healthcare, their mental health care, and these really critical and often irreversible decisions, I have a huge problem with this, and I will be as loud as I possibly can so that parents are aware of this and can take whatever measures they feel appropriate to protect their children. I bear no party affiliation. I don't care what letter is next to your name. this is a terrible policy. And in 2021, when I started going down the rabbit hole, I wanted to know who was responsible for making these laws that would not allow me to participate in my child's medical health care. I wanted to know who was responsible for making laws that allowed the state to take my child. And that's when I learned that it was not just the Democrats. And people need to know that, and people need to hold these elected officials accountable to this. If you're going to, over on one side, say, we're fighting for your parental rights, we're fighting against Senate Bill 5181 and House Bill 1296, we believe in parental rights and we're fighting for parents. And then on the other hand, you're going to vote yes for kids to get a whole stockpile of hormones. You've got to be kidding me. And, people, it's incumbent upon citizens to be paying attention to this, because you can't just believe what anyone is telling you. You can't just believe what's being put out on social media. I really implore you to be curious and go research things yourself and find answers. I mean, even the Senate Republicans on X were putting out old information on House Bill 1296. They were saying that Democrats voted down an amendment about immediate notification about if your child had been sexually molested or assaulted in school. That's not the bill that passed through the Senate. That's an old version of the bill. And so I don't know if they're just trying to get a reaction, trying to get the clicks and the engagement on social media, but it's really important that before you react to things, really do some research, really do some due diligence. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can usually Google things pretty fast. And the Washington legislative website is really quite easy to use. leg.wa.gov, leg.wa.gov. You can just go type in a bill number on the top of the page, and everything about that bill is on that page. Amendments and everything, roll calls, everything is on the page. And with AI tools, you can go and plug in a bill to AI and say, give me a summary about this bill. And that's really helpful. So there are lots of tools. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it is your responsibility to be informed and to know what's going on. And it's especially your responsibility to protect your kids. There was one, I'm going to end on a high note. How about that? So if you are looking at leaving Washington, I will say Florida is nice. People always ask me why Florida. Well, first of all, of course, we love DeSantis, but we knew that he was not going to be governor forever. But I am a sun seeker, and my husband is a sun seeker. And we wanted, after living our entire lives in Western Washington, we wanted to be in the sun. And I love it here because it's sunny. We live near the beach, and every day feels like a vacation because there's palm trees right outside my window, and it's amazing. I love it. But our legislature's a dumpster fire this session. The Florida House is full of RINOs. We have a big problem here, but that's for another time. We're going to end on a high note, I promised. We do have a bill, Senate Bill 952, House Bill 6025. The Senate version was sponsored by Senator Blaise Ingoglia, and I did a YouTube video on it a while back, a couple months ago probably. But Florida has a law right now that says if there is a declared emergency, guns can't be sold, ammo can't be sold, it can't even be marketed. And so I think this was during when Rick Scott was the governor. I think right after Parkland is when they made that a law. So this bill is to repeal that, which is great. And so this was one of the bills that I was really hoping would make it through the Senate, and it did, or the legislature, and it did make it through the legislature. I think the House version, House Bill 6025, I think that's the bill that actually ended up passing. So that's going to repeal that. And even if there's a declared emergency, if we have another COVID situation or something like that, you will still be able to purchase a firearm or purchase your ammo despite that. So that is a huge win for the Second Amendment in Florida. We're really, really happy about that. So we'll just end. Terry wants sun. Come enjoy the sun, Terry. There's a lot of houses for sale. I don't know if people, it seems like there's more than we bought in 2022, and it seems like there's more availability now. And that was 2022 was kind of the height of the market. Anyway, off on that another bird walk. Anyway, thanks, Maddie B. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kitty. Thanks, all of you guys, for watching. Please do share this with other concerned citizens that maybe need a little update on what's going on in Washington and all around the country. And I am here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe to the channel. That really helps other people see us as well. So, and make sure that you're also subscribed to our Substack, which is Substack, conservativeladiesofamerica.substack.com. And you can also find us conservativeladiesofamerica.com. So I'll see you guys next week.